Well, good morning, everyone. I think it is 11 o'clock according to Central Time that I am in, and I think we'll get started here. So welcome. Just out of curiosity today, how many of you are interested in your CBAP certification? Raise your hand. Okay, so it looks like most of you. All right. So how about CCBA? Anyone for CCBA? ECBA. Okay, there's an ECBA. And how about any of the new Agile certification? And they also have a data analytics certification. Oh, good. All right. So we have people interested in a little bit of both. Awesome. Well, let's take a quick drive through on the various certifications. I'm Susan Hydorn, your lead, I guess, today for this chat. And I do have my CBAP, and I also have my Agile certification through IIBA, and we'll be talking also about another certification that just came up. So they're constantly moving ahead also. So welcome, and hopefully I can answer some of your questions. If you have questions, you can either raise your hand, I'll call on you, or if you would like to put your question in the chat box, and I will do my best to answer it. We're going to take a road trip here and review very high level the different certifications. So they have 3 basic certifications and they have 2 specialized certifications. These are the basic certifications they've had for a while. They have ECBA, they have CCBA and CBAP. So what do those mean? ECBA is our entry-level certification. So generally, who's the target audience for ECBA? That would be students. Maybe you're enrolled in a BA not certification, but academic program, new graduates, people from different professions. A lot of times people who are in our ECBA classes come from, maybe a development side, maybe the project managers looking at rounding out their skill sets. Functional managers, oftentimes I get managers who say, yeah, I have to manage BAs, but I don't know much about it. So they are good candidates for ECBA. The nice thing is, yay, no work experience, so you don't need to do that. No particular knowledge area experience. You still need professional development hours, 21 hours in the last 4 years. That can be on anything related to business analysis. And you have to sign a code of conduct. And the exam itself is multiple choice, as all the exams are. All the exams are multiple choice, have 4 potential answers. The ECBA is a little different in that it's a knowledge-based exam, and so they ask you more knowledge-based, like definitional questions. They'll ask you if you're doing something, what kind of technique might you want to use. So very basic questions. The good thing is there's only 50 questions and it's only an hour long. You take it online through PSI. It's an online proctoring, and so you don't even have to go anywhere. You don't even have to leave your home or your office. You can just take it there. And now we have CCBA. That's kind of that middle level, kind of developing BAs who have maybe come into the role. Developing BAs, hybrids, people who do, maybe PM work and BA work and QA work, kind of combination thereof. Consultants, trainers might have that. You do need, as far as work experience, 3,750 hours total over the last 7 years. And so then you have 900 hours in each knowledge area. There are 6 knowledge areas. You need 900 hours in 2 of those, or 500 hours in 4 of those. Again, you need 21 hours within 4 years. All of our certification classes, whether you take it in person, virtual, or as a recording, all accomplish your hour needs. References, You need 2 references, but the interesting thing about references, they're only checked if you're audited, but you do need to do a reference. You need to give them contact information. A reference does have to be either your manager who does your performance review or another CBAP. And if you are a consultant, you can also have a client who is overseeing your consultant work. You do still have to sign a code of conduct in all of them. And this is more scenario based. So you're giving a little scenario saying, gee, you're a BA and here's the situation. What would you do? Or what should you have done first? Or what should you done? What do you want to do next? So the description, the little scenarios are probably about 2 to 4 statements long, not very long. Again, multiple choice, you have 4 answers, potential answers. And in this case, there's 130 questions and it takes 3 hours long. You will have to go to a Prometric site to actually do your CCBA exam. You can't do that with a virtual proctor. And then CBAP, which is our highest level, this is for seasoned BAs, BA and consultants, and a lot of you said you were looking at that certification. So you have a minimum, a little more hours in CCBA, 7,500 hours in the last 10 years, 900 hours as opposed to 504 of the knowledge areas. So again, there's 6 knowledge areas. You got to have 900 hours of experience in each. You do have to have 35 hours of professional development, classroom development in the last 4 years. Again, we talked about references as the same, code of conduct the same. And they've just changed this in 3.0. If you had gotten your certification on 2.0, it is more based on scenario-based questions, but now they've gone to case studies. So when you look at your exam, you will have a case study that's a number of paragraphs long. And unfortunately, I think this means scrolling. So they're, well, they say 1 to 1.5 pages. So basically it's, you know, maybe 3-4 paragraphs of information. And then they will have questions after that. Sometimes there's simple questions, maybe a little bit scenario based. And given this case study, you know, what would you do? And so it's a little bit different studying. You really have to skim the case study, look at the scenario. What is the scenario asking? Go back to the case study, reread that, and then try and answer it. And generally there's 4 to 5 questions on each case study. So that's a little bit different. That's new in 3.0. There's still multiple choice answers. There's 120 questions. There's probably, we've been told, I didn't take my CBAP on this version, but people who have taken the CBAP on 3.0 have mentioned that there's probably about 5 or 6 case studies, and then there's also a few scenario questions thrown in there to get you to 120 questions. But because it's a case study, you have a few less questions, but you have a little bit more time. You have another 30 minutes to do that. So that's kind of a overview, a summary of the 3 types of certifications. Now, so what do you need to study as far as passing the exam? And so level 1, of course, is ECBA. And what they have done here is kind of give you an exam blueprint. This is directly from IIBA. They said, okay, these are the core topic areas. This is the percentage of questions you're going to get. And so then we've extrapolated that percentage based on the number of questions. And so these are all chapters. How many of you've read the BA BOK, or at least skimmed it or purchased it or have it? Raise your hand. Because as you're working on your certification or looking even toward your certification, I would highly encourage that you get a copy of the BOK, and a lot of you have, so kudos to you. In the BOK, you will find a number of chapters, and you will find a chapter basically on, you know, kind of business analysis and profession. You'll find a chapter on underlying competencies, concepts, techniques. There's 50 of them, count them, 50 to know. And then you have the core knowledge areas, and this I've kind of outlined in red, and these are the things that you really have to focus. You have to focus on all of them. But these are, when we're talking about knowledge areas, there's 6 knowledge areas. There's business analysis, planning and monitoring, elicitation and collaboration. And these are, think of these as buckets. So your business analysis, planning and monitoring are all the stuff you have to do to plan for the BA effort. Elicitation and collaboration. How do you elicit requirements? How do you make sure you collaborate and communicate with your stakeholders? Requirements lifecycle management is really all about managing the requirements throughout, before the project starts, in the project, after the project ends. How do you manage them? How do you maintain them, verify them, validate them, you know, care and feed them, so to speak. Strategy analysis is kind of that pre-project work, which is kind of interesting, because business analysis come into the project before the project even starts to understand the business need, you know, current state, future state, gap analysis, and then they are part of the project when it begins, getting further more requirements, eliciting more information, and then we have solution evaluation at the end, where you actually evaluate the solution. Did it do what we said it was going to do? Did it get the value we thought we were going to get from it? So think of the BA work as pre-project and post-project, as well as project. So here again is the level, or the number of questions in each one. And so you can see that the questions in ECBA, there's 50 of them, and they're kind of scattered. There's 1 or 2 about, you know, what is a business analyst? What is, you know, BA is a role versus a title, you know, some of those questions. Some of the competencies we need to be a really good BA, you know, we need communication skills, we need to understand the industry, we need to understand the organization, and so there's going to be those types of skills. Networking, negotiating, and conflict management, some of those other skills that we need, right? Because there's never any conflict around requirements. So those are some of the things that we have to understand. Just core key concepts, what are some terms, and then techniques, which is really hard for an ECBA because there's 50 of them and there's only 6 to 7 questions, and you're going, oh my gosh, where do I start? But as an ECBA, studying for their ECBA, I would just know what the techniques are, that you can recognize them, and the purpose. You know, just keep it simple as you're studying for your ECBA exam. And then you'll have 2 and 3 questions about planning, elicitation quite a bit, because as BAs, we do elicit, most of our job is to elicit information from people. Requirements lifecycle management is managing those requirements. And strategy analysis, there's 2 to 3 questions there. 12, because that's where we spend a lot of time initially as our BAs. That's during project work. And there's 1 question on solution evaluation. So ECBAs, if you're looking for that, just have a nice understanding of the terms, the concepts, the task. Each knowledge area has tasks, usually about 5 tasks in each knowledge area, with some exceptions. And just kind of a high-level view, so you get an understanding of the terminology and the core concepts of what it means to be a BA. Now, CCBA and CBAP, a lot of you were also interested in that area. Well, they divided it according to knowledge areas. So we have 18 questions for business analysis, planning, and monitoring versus 21. 30. They have a lot more elicitation questions here than they actually do in CBAP, which is kind of interesting, although they do have more questions anyway, but they're scenario-based questions, so they go a little faster than trying to read a case study. 27 versus 23, 18 versus 23, a little bit more in strategy analysis, because they expect you as a seasoned BA to know a little bit more about that pre-project work. Requirements, analysis and design, pretty much the same. Solution evaluation, again, a little bit more on CBAP, because they expect you to follow up and see if we got the value. Now, here's the critical thing. Please, please, please remember. We also talk about this in our certification classes, but if you want to study on your own, which is just fine, I just want you to make it apparent. Now, it looks like IIBA states, oh, there are no questions around business analysis and profession underlying competencies, concepts, and techniques. Do not believe that. what they have done is they've taken those 50 techniques, because there are a lot of techniques in the exam. There's a lot of technique questions. They'll give you a copy of the model, and then you're expected to understand the notation, be able to answer questions around a model that they provide you. And so it really is, there's a lot of techniques. There's underlying competency questions, but what they've done is they've taken those core concepts and they've included them in the number of questions in the knowledge areas. So like elicitation and collaboration, there's a lot of elicitation techniques. You know, you think about there's the data mining and prototyping and interviewing and surveys and all of those other techniques. Well, part of the 30 questions and part of the 18 is actually incorporating those techniques, incorporating those underlying competencies. So there have been a number of people who have come back to us and they said, well, you know, your blueprint says that there's no technique questions, and there were a lot of technique questions. How come you tell me it's not? First of all, it's not our blueprint. It's IIBA's. I think they kind of did a certain disservice because they didn't put in the fact you still have to know these, but they are just going to be incorporated into a question around BA. So they'll give you a scenario like you're a BA and you're trying to get information from a large group of people in the shortest amount of time. What technique might you use? Okay, well, I would probably use a survey in that question. Or they may be doing a data model and said, hey, you know, so-and-so's just completed this data model. Can you answer some questions that a business person would have around this data model? So you have to be able to read it. So even though it says NA, what they did is they took that information and parsed it into the actual knowledge areas. So there are questions on this, they just get synthesized in between. And I want to make sure you know that, because I don't want you caught up in missing that, because like I said, there's been people who said, oh, I don't have to read the competencies chapter or techniques chapter because there's no questions. That's not true. Any questions so far on this? I'm going to go kind of fast, but kind of give you an overview. All right, I'll continue on here. So tips, okay? So one of the things you have to do before you can take the exam is apply for the exam. And IIB has kind of changed their process. One of the first things you do is pay for the exam before you even do the application. So you give them your money first, and then you get to do the application. Kind of an interesting concept, I'd say, but that's the way it is. So what I suggest people doing is that document your hours first, so that when you fill out the application, you have all your information there, and all you're doing is transferring it to their application, right? You don't have to sit there going, okay, I worked on project Z last year. How many hours did I, you know, you have it already right there. And you can either make your own sheet and just capture that information, or you can go to watermarklearning.com. You do have to sign in and get a passcode to get to all of our templates. It's free, so no worries there. So if you download our application worksheet, it helps you organize the projects and the hours. So you can say, okay, on this project, and you can, and I don't know if you can see it, but it's divided by knowledge areas. So you might say, okay, project X, I spent as a BA, because you're only focusing on BA work, otherwise they'll deduct it. 500 hours, or maybe let's say 200 hours. Okay, of those 200 hours, I did maybe 10 in planning, I did 20 in elicitation, so it kind of groups that information for you. And so the key thing is to know the task in each area when you're trying to say, well, is this in strategy analysis or is this in solution evaluation? So I would at least know the knowledge areas and the task as you're doing this. And then when you're filling it out, you can say, okay, well, I spent so much time in this group, I spent so much time in this group. And then by the time you get to the application online at IIBA, you can just put the information in and you don't have to go back and in and out and in and out. You can do that if you wish. I just think it's a little easier to have it up front. If you are not a member of IIBA, we suggest you do so because you can save money on your application becoming an IIBA member. So what they've done is that if you are a member, you get a discounted rate on the application. If you are a non-member, they said, great, you're going to pay this much more than a member would pay. But what it does is it covers you by becoming a member of IIBA. So the extra money from the member point to the non-member, that extra amount actually pays for 1 year of IIB membership. And since you have to pay it anyway, not being an IIBA member, you might as well become a member. And so this is kind of, you know, and then you get to save a little bit of money. The other thing to note as you're doing your application is don't stress out for the exact hours. Gee, did I do this for 30 hours or did I only do it for 28? I mean, one, they're going to be hard pressed to prove it anyway, and two, that it'll just, yeah, it'll make you go crazy. So don't stress out over the exact hours or the dates. It's like, gee, did this start February 15th or maybe it was the 13th? So just make sure it's in the ballpark though. I mean, you don't want to say you worked on one project 3 years before you actually did it, because they can audit you, and they audit you just generically. So you might be in the luck of the draw. If you've ever been in a airport, right? You go in the airport lines and once in a while you have to go into another line because it buzzed, because so many people go through. Oh, you get to be the lucky person going in the other airport line. Auditing for them is just like that. Oh, we've got our 15th person today. You get audited. So, and this kind of, to me, if you fill out some type of form, helps you cover yourself on auditing too. So get in the ballpark. I mean, at least this same year, and do the best you can on hours. Do the best you can on where you think you spent your time. Was it in elicitation? Was it in solution evaluation? And again, make sure you kind of know the task so you know where to put your hours. So anything about questions around application? Raise your hand, or you can put it in the chat box. Let me just unmute you. Is it Atashi? Are you there, Tashi? You raised your hand.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry about that.
Okay. That's okay. It's that mute thing.
Thank you. So my question is about auditing. So I've submitted my hours and scheduled a test date. So I'm just curious as to, like, by when would I be notified that I'm going to be audited, if I'm going to be audited, or
they would
I
have
wasn't
let
flagged for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. They would not give you a test date, and they would have let you know right away if you're going to be audited.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
So the nice thing is you're probably good to go, because they don't let people even look for test dates if they're going to be audited.
Got it. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Any other questions? All right. Okay, so for more information, obviously always go to IIBA. They have the latest and greatest, and they have been changing a lot, and even their website has changed a bit. So if you were used to their older one, you know, you might have to take time to find where everything is, because sometimes I even have a hard time finding it. I have another question here, so hold on. See if I can unmute you. Oh, you're self-muted, Raman, maybe it's Raman. I apologize if I got your name incorrect. You can unmute yourself. You're self-muted for your question. Or you can put it in the chat box if you like. You have your hand up, but I'm not hearing anything.
Hello.
Yes, there you are.
Yeah.
And what was your question?
No. I just joined, so
Oh, okay, perfect.
yeah, it was a mistake. Yeah.
Okay, no problem, no problem. I just wanted to make sure that if you had a question, it was answered. So welcome. So as I had said earlier, look at IIBA. Make sure you have all their information there. We also have information and course materials, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. This webinar is recorded, as all of our webinars are. So if you missed it or you came in late and you wanted to know what I said, check out Watermark Learning Resources webinars, and so then you can review any IIBA chat that we've had. We do these monthly, and you can hear it again if you need to, so that's no problem. And also some other webinars that we've done over the years are out there too that might grab your interest. And then again, I would always say just make sure you have a copy of the book, because you do need to be able to read that and go through that. Makes great sleeping material if you're having trouble sleeping, because it's pretty dry. Really good concepts, but fairly dry, because it's a body of knowledge. So they're all kind of like that. They just give you the data that you kind of need. We also do have offer classes if people, rather than studying on their own, want a little bit more support by perhaps an instructor. We do have classes in CBAP, CCBA, ECBA, so you can take advantage of that. We also have online question bank that if you want to practice, you certainly can do that. So we have, I think, over 1,000 questions that you can practice to see if you know the information, so that when you're preparing to study, that can always helps. So what do we suggest on prep tips? Generally, they say here 100 hours on the average. That's probably pretty close. Most of the students that I have taught in my CBAP prep class, and I ask them to report back, because we like to celebrate with you when you pass your exam. And even if you don't take a prep class, let us know if you passed your exam, because we're always excited to hear that. I would say that generally the average would be 3 months of study time, and that depends on how much you study. I've had students who study every day and weekend, and they take it in a month. I've had other people that life happens, they put in their application, and maybe they took a class, or maybe they just started studying and life happens. I've had one student who actually took their exam the day before their application expired, which you get a whole year to take the exam. But generally, on the average, I would say 3 months is pretty much average, and then 6 months, 3 to 6 months, I would say is pretty much. Cheryl, did you have a question? I see your hand up.
Did she really just call me Cheryl?
I'll just mute her. So, and again, you can put your questions in the chat box. Read the book a number of times. And if you want extra study and information, you can certainly purchase our study guide. And there's also a packet that you can do, so you can get the study guide, you can get study tables, which are my favorite, and you can get the I think that's I'm trying to remember what's in the total packet. I think it's certainly and access to the OZ questions. Yeah, there's kind of 3 things in the packet. There's various packages that you can do. If you just want to get access to our online questions, you can just do that. Our study guide is a review of the box, so it has some of the same things in the box, However, it puts it in kind of plain English, because the Bach, as I said, is pretty dry, and sometimes it's hard for people to understand what are you trying to get to. So we've taken that and we've put it in kind of a little bit more plain English. So it looks like, Edward, you might have a question, or at least you have your hand up.
Yeah, I had a quick question. I actually typed it in, but I figure I'll go ahead and ask as well. You mentioned that they have changed the exam slightly, and I was wondering, I've been doing the question bank on the Watermarks and practice simulation test, and I'm wondering about two things. The questions that we get in there, how updated and close are they to the real test that is current, and how close is actually UI, the experience, in how you interact with the questions? Is that similar or kind of?
Yeah, there's a couple of answers there, a couple of questions too. Number one, we certainly don't have the questions that IIBA does, because they don't let us see their questions either, which is a good thing, you know, otherwise the exam becomes mute. So they are our developed questions. We focused on understanding the key concepts, and we suggest that if you at least get 80%, you're going to be pretty good on the exam. So most people have gone through our question bank. They get to understand the concepts, get a understanding of the terminology, little scenarios. We also have, when you do the exam simulation, we actually do break it out into case studies. I think we have probably about 8 or 10 case studies in our exam simulation. You only get in an exam simulation if you do the drills, which is a combination of questions, or if you do our, the drills are actually knowledge area questions only. So if I want to say, I only want questions on strategy analysis, we just give you scenario-based questions, because when you're looking actually at a case study, there's multiple questions from multiple knowledge areas, and it's hard to do a case study and then separate all the questions out, because one question will lead to another question, which are in all different question domain areas, knowledge areas. So it's similar, but it's not exact. And most people who have used our online simulation questions feel pretty comfortable once they take the test. They sometimes even say the exam itself is easier than our questions.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Did anyone else? I thought someone else had their hand up. All right, so use the chat box. I have the chat box open. I don't necessarily, let's see if I can do the questions really a little bit here. Okay, so we had some more. So Scott asked, the majority of the questions are scenario based. How does Watermark prepare students for those questions during the coursework? Well, Scott, I'm not sure if I understand your question. Can you give me a little bit more information? I'll unmute you. So you're self-muted, Scott, if you'd like to ask your question. Let's see. Sherry asked, where's the link to the question bank? There is a cost to the question bank, and you can go on to our Watermark website under certification resources, and you can see access to that. Sorry about that. I'm getting some wonderful pop-ups here. Let's see, are there any podcast or audio files of the Bach that can be listened to? Unfortunately not that I know of. I don't think IIBA has put theirs in an audio format. I know we have not done our study guide in that format. So there's no audio forms, unfortunately. But those are good ideas. So I like those ideas. I can certainly present them to the head office and see what they think about those ideas. Let's see if there's any other questions. What happens if you don't pass your CBAP exam with the expiration date? You have a year in order to take the exam. I would suggest doing it earlier than later, not wait for the last day. But the nice thing is you can take it 3 times within that year. You have a retake fee, but within that year, if you wanted to take it on a Monday and you find out you didn't pass and you want to take it on a Tuesday, you can do that. There used to be a three-month waiting period. They've left that. So you can take it 3 times within a year. I just generally suggest studying in between times. So when you get your exam done, they'll tell you whether you're higher, average, or lower than in each knowledge area. So strategy analysis, you're lower. Requirements life cycle management, you were high, you scored higher. So they kind of just give you a higher, lower, you're right on track. If you get too many lowers, you probably don't pass. But they do give you 3 opportunities. After that year that the application expires, then it is up to you to reapply. And unfortunately, another fee. Oh, my slides are slightly cut off at the bottom. Sorry about that. Let me just see if I can put this in a little bit different view, and hopefully it'll be a little bit more questions. So can you see, hopefully you can see the bottom of my screen a little bit better. Question on simulation test watermark, how up to date? I think we talked about that. Is the CBAP test administered in time sections, or are certificate candidates simply allowed 3 hours to finish the entire thing? You get 3.5 hours, and they're not in sections. It's all the questions. So you'll get a case study, you'll get 4 to 5 questions, then you go to the next case study, you'll have 4 to 5 questions, a few scenario questions in between there. They mix them all up. So they are not based on knowledge areas as ours are, because some people, when they study, they want to just study one area at a time, and that's why we broke ours up. Would I be notified? Yes, you're going to be notified pretty fast. I think immediately or otherwise really fast if you're going to be audited. So I think I have all of those. Oh, do you get a grade? No, you don't. It's just pass or fail. So at the end of your exam, you know, you'll go through and you'll scroll and they'll say, are you done? Because you can mark some things that, you know, say, gee, I want to go back and look at it. So maybe question number 5 I wasn't sure about, so I skipped, but now I go back, finish all those up. And then it says, you know, kind of confirm if you're finished. Okay, you're finished. And then I'm just going to warn you, you got to take a lovely survey. And by that time, you're kind of frustrated. It's like, just tell me if I passed or not, right? Passed or failed. So you got to go through the survey. They do the survey, and then they tell you you either pass or fail. And then the only thing they do is give you the knowledge areas and say, did you score lower in this knowledge area or higher? And that might be even an email. That might be an email rather than even in the system. I think you just get a pass or fail. And by the time you see pass or fail, that you're done anyway, you know, because your brain is so fried that it's like, I passed, oh my gosh, I passed. And hopefully most of you pass anyway. Let's see. If there's any other questions? As far as user interface of the exam, how similar is watermarks to the real exam? It's going to be different. It's going to they go through Prometric, and Prometric gives you time though before the exam to get kind of comfortable with it. They'll tell you how to use the exam. You'll get oftentimes either a piece of paper to write on or a laminate with whiteboard markers, and you can, you know, kind of make notes to yourself, but you can't bring anything in. No drinks, no watches, no cell phones, no nothing. They search you from top to bottom. So their interface is going to be different than ours. All right, so let's see, anything else? Look at the BA-BAC sections. I would say skim the BAC first, then dive deep down into sections, you know, so if you use our study guide. So I would read the BAC, do our study guide in that same knowledge area, and then do questions. And then, I mean, that's just how I do it. You got to figure out what's going to work best for you all. Again, if 80% in a knowledge area is pretty good, study more on those knowledge areas you're not very familiar with. So a lot of times solution evaluation, strategy analysis are new areas, plus planning. Most of us don't plan as BAs, and that might be unfamiliar to you. So you might want to take a little bit more time to take a look at that. Get plenty of rest before your exam. I like how they put that, right? I don't know about you, but when I'm getting ready for a big exam or something big, I don't get any sleep because I'm worried about it. But if you can, get plenty of rest. I would just don't stay up, but get the rest that you need. If it helps to do a brain dump, maybe of all the tasks, you can certainly do that. I would not suggest it for short exams like ECBA, AAAC, and their latest one, CD. I would have to look at it again, but we'll see in a second. But so anyway, don't do a data dump for those because they're too short. So if you got a certification exam that's only an hour, don't do any extra because you only have that hour to answer those questions, or 2 hours, whatever it happens to be. But because it's 2 hours for the other two exams. But if you can, a lot of times what I did, at least when I took the exam, is I wrote down all the knowledge areas and all the tasks just so I could remember them, and then I could always go back. Oh yeah, this was in, we're talking about here, because when I looked at a question, I'd say, okay, where are they in the knowledge area? Are they talking about elicitation? Are they talking about pre-project stuff and strategy? Now, I mean, where are we? It's kind of like finding yourself in a big shopping mall, right? What are they asking about? And then I could put some context around it and answer the question better. So I kind of like doing that. And then skip over the difficult questions. When I took the exam, the first 3 I couldn't answer, and of course then I had probably because I had a panic attack. And then I said, oh, I know the answer to 4. And then, so I would mark the ones that I needed to go back, and then I would go back. So they let you go back, they let you mark them. You can also have they have a cross out feature that's really nice. It's like, well, I know it's not C and D. That means it's A and B. So now you got a 50-50 chance, which is better than a 25% chance to pick the right one. So that's kind of some of those study tips. Again, you can take your exam up to 3 times in a 1-year period. There's no waiting time anymore. And then once you get certified, and this is for CCBA and CBAP only. ECBA, once you're certified as an ECBA. You don't have to get any more credit hours. However, you do have to get to maintain your certification. You do need 60 credit hours. And that can be volunteer, that can be just utilizing your own BA work, that counts, self-learning, taking classes, speaking at a conference, writing articles. Maybe you have a BA community in your organization, you can participate in that. So that is some things that you can do. They have a whole recertification handbook. So if you go to their site, they say, okay, how do I get my 60 CDUs? You got 3 years, and I suggest, at least what I do is I do 20 each year, because then I'm not sitting there, a week before my certification is up and trying to figure out how do I get 60 CDUs. They're usually not that hard, but I don't want to wait till the last minute. Okay, a number of questions. What details do you suggest recording in the brain dump? I usually do the knowledge areas and the task. For sure. So is the brain dump counted part of the 3.5 hours? Yes, it is, Edward. It is counted, so you don't want to spend too much time doing that. You want to spend most of the time answering the questions. But if it will help you, to me, it just relaxed me, putting down the knowledge areas in each task so that I could, it's like, okay, I got that. I'm okay. Now I can take the test. Do the PDUs for any training course count towards recertification? Yes. If you take it, let's say you take a business analysis, I'll give you one of our classes, Business Analysis Foundation or Agile Business Analysis. Those do count for recertification, and Watermark is a registered provider, so there's really no question that you would get your CDUs for recertification. All right, so then let's see. We're going to talk about 2 other certifications that IIBA has. I think a couple of you had mentioned that you are interested in the other certifications. AAC just came out last year. There's no eligibility requirements. Yay! You don't have to prove your hours. It's recommended though for people who have some experience in Agile, because it's going to be kind of hard for you to pass it if you have no Agile experience. So people suggest 2 to 5 years of Agile experience. So you're, as a BA professional or just even Agile practitioners, can get this to 2 to 5 years of experience. They have 4 domains, and the percentage of coverage is the Agile domain, saying what is, they have an Agile mindset. Now they use some terminology that is not used in the Agile or Scrum world. If you use Scrum, most of us use Scrum. It is a little bit different how they do things. So there is an Agile extension 2.0 that you use as your guide. We do have also study tables and flashcards and an online question bank. So that can also help you be able to pass the exam. It's 85 questions. You get 2 hours. It is delivered via remote proctoring through PSI. And again, it's just like the others, it's multiple choice, but their questions are scenario based, but it's not big scenarios, especially when you only have 2 hours. I think I got done just a little over an hour. Some people have taken a little bit more time. And so it's just, you know, reading the scenarios, probably 1 to 2, I would say maybe 2 to 3 would be average as far as the statement. And then you'd go, okay, now what's the answer? Specifically, Sherry asked PDUs for the training course count for recertification. So if you take our certification, CBAP or CCBA certification, those hours count for the professional development hours you need to sit for the exam, and you would get the exact amount of hours. But you could also have other training courses as long as they either are 21 credit hours. If you're going for CCBA or CBAP, would be 35 credit hours. And then our last IIB certification in business data analytics. And I couldn't remember the acronym for that, so it's CBDA. Again, there's no eligibility requirements. This is if you are a BA in or have extensive experience in data analysis and data analytics. They have an exam. They're trying to move toward, IIBA is moving not only to have their base CBAP class or certifications, but also specialty certifications. And so this is their latest certification, just came out this year. In fact, they are offering, if anybody wants to take it, 20% discount in price if you want to take the exam by the end of this month, by the 31st. And so they don't have like an Agile extension, they don't have a BOC, but they have some white papers that the exam is based on. So it's based on basically the introduction to business data analytics and also business data analytics and organizational view. And they also have some other white papers and some other documents you can use to study for the exam. So it's not as componentized as the previous exams. So there's there's 6 domains: identifying research questions, source data, analyze, interpret, report results. There's 75 questions. They're scenario based, just like AAC is. So very familiar, multiple choice answers, 2 hours in length, again proctored by PSI. So where we have support study materials for AAC, we don't yet on CBDA, but come back and check with us. I'm sure we'll have it by the end of the year, because that'll be our next certification that we'll be doing some work on. So again, just came out. If you want to know more information, of course, go to the IIBA website. That should be the key. area. And then if you want to stay tuned when we're going to have our materials out, we'll probably do study tables again. We'll also probably do flashcards, and we'll probably do online exam practice questions, because that's usually what we cover in certifications, unless it's a big one like PMP or CBAP. So we have a study guide if you're interested. Again, online study exams, and we have that for all the exams. We're just updating our ECBA questions as we speak. CBAP and CCBA are pretty solid. AAC questions are really there too, and like I said, we should be having questions on the newest certification by the end of the year. There are some flashcards if you want to purchase flashcards, just to get an understanding of the terminology. Study tables, which kind of give you a nice summary view. We have that for the BAC and the Agile extension, as well as flashcards. So with that said, wow, that was a quick review. I have about 10 minutes. Does anyone else have any questions? I know I went through that quite fast. There was a lot, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. You can either raise your hand or put them in the chat box, or you can put them in the question box. All right, I don't see any. And again, if you want to revisit this recording, it'll be on our website, free, as well as other recordings we have. Oh, Scott, you have, oh, no, your hand's down. Did you have a question, Scott? I wasn't quite sure. Let me unmute you. Okay, you're unmuted, Scott.
Okay, hi, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Okay, I've been having audio issues.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I can hear you. It's just the audio. So I tried leaving it in the chat box. So my question, I was the one earlier that asked about scenario-based questions. I think you answered it along the way, but when I put the question in, I was saying, how does Watermark prepare you for the scenario-based? Do you give those type of questions? And I think you mentioned that you did several times.
We do, yeah.
That's basically.
Okay, I'm so glad you followed up, yes. So most of our questions are scenario-based questions, except for CBAP. If you go into the exam simulation and not the drills, you will also see some case studies, just to get you familiar with how to read a case study. But otherwise, they are either scenario-based for CBAP and CCBA, and there'll be more definitional for ECBA, and AAC has little mini scenarios. So.
Okay, because I think I was told that isn't the test is a case study or scenario? I think it was case study, right?
CBAP, are you talking about CBAP? Yeah, CBAP is case study. But what we've done, because case studies are difficult anyway, we've created a lot of scenario-based questions for you to get comfortable with the concepts and the terminology, so that you should be able to apply it easily to a case study. Because basically it's a case study with little mini scenarios anyway. You just have to read the case study to get the information and where the answer is.
Okay. I was also told something that there might be a calculation questions. Is that true?
Oh, good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Scott. Yes, there are financial calculations in the exam. And so you will need to know them. There's different estimating calculations, and if you look in the technique under financial analysis, there's a lot of calculations they have there too. It's, you know, you got your return on investment and your payback period and other financial questions. The thing is that if you understand the concepts, my understanding is that the financial questions are easy enough to do without a calculator. So my goal, if I study for it, is to understand the concepts, understand what, if the percentage, if I calculate the percentage, if it's larger, it's bad, or if it's lower, it's bad, you know. So just understanding how those calculations are, because they don't give you a calculator, so it's not like the PMP where you have to calculate net present value, thank goodness. But you do need to understand the concept of what they're trying to get.
Okay, I had a couple of friends that just finished it. That's the reason why they said they give you calculators, but you can't remove them from the from your desk area. So they supply them, but you cannot lift them up or take them. And they told me you can go use the restroom or go get a water break or take a break, but they kind of recheck you every time.
Yes.
You go
yes,
through the process. So that's why I was
yeah. And that was, thank you for sharing on that.
Okay, well, that's all.
Yeah. Because I had never heard that. The students that have got back to me said that they weren't allowed calculators. They couldn't bring in their own, and they did not offer them. They didn't provide them. So that might have been a change, or it might have just been with that Prometric site. I find that based on my students' information, not all Prometric sites are the same. So some of them give you paper, some of them give you kind of a cellophane. Sometimes maybe they give you calculators, maybe they don't. But I heard that they're not. And
yeah,
you would ask your friends since they just took it, but it didn't seem like what I was reported that the calculations are too difficult. You just need to understand them. And we do have calculation questions in our online exam too.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Any other questions before we hang up? All right. With that said, I'm going to wish you all the best and success in passing whatever exam you are studying for. And just feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. We would like to support you in any way we can. So best of luck. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and perhaps our paths will cross again.